Una vez más, bienvenidos a esta sesión. Agradecer a Michael por esta oportunidad. Tenemos las mejores referencias de APA, ellos tienen mucha experiencia en el trabajo ya de monitoreo, como también en todo el trabajo social, el tema de derechos. Tiene una característica muy especial de que APA siempre nos conmueve con la agenda que ellos manejan, ¿no? Porque más allá de ser una entidad no gubernamental, tienen una esencia importante del sentir de los pueblos indígenas ahí en Guyana, con una trayectoria excelente, mucho que rescatar. Entonces, también agradecer al equipo traductor y a todos ustedes. Entonces, vamos a empezar y bienvenido una vez más a este ciclo de conferencias. Adelante, Karen.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Braulio. So, Michael, the floor is all yours. We're very happy to hear about your experiences. You can turn on your video and your audio as well.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Braulio, as well for recognizing the work that we do. Good morning, everyone. Bon dia, buenos dias, bonjour. Thank you from the APA. We greet you from Guyana. Guyana, of course, as many of you know, is well, really the only English-speaking country in South America, and we're just at the northeastern tip, sharing between Venezuela, Suriname, and Brazil. So today I will be sharing with you a little bit about our monitoring program as APA in terms of what it is that we do, where we do it, how we do it, and I hope that I can put it over in a simple way that you can understand. And I trust that if you have questions, you can always drop them in the chat, or if opportunity permits, you can actually ask them. But if you put them in the chat, it will be easier for me to respond to them as I go along. So I'll tell you a little bit first about the APA and who we are, Joe, so as to remind you in terms of who the APA is. And as we go along in the presentation, we will kind of get a little bit more into the details of the work that we do, where we do that work and how we do that work. So briefly, the APA is a non-governmental Indigenous peoples organization formed in April 1991 in the face of human rights violations against Indigenous peoples. Prior to 1991, there were groups in the country who sort of represented the interests of Guyana. However, we felt that it was not enough, and the APA was birthed out of that, started working in the Office of the Human Rights Agency in Guyana, and before it was formalized. But now as it is, APA is a recognized formal registered organization in the country, and basically one of the organizations that really look out for the rights of Indigenous peoples. So it's an advocacy organization that seeks to promote and defend the rights of the Indigenous peoples of Guyana. It has members through community units in over 60 communities across Guyana. So APA does not focus on an individual membership, but more of a group membership in terms of units, because we recognize the importance of working together as a people. And it is led by an executive committee comprising persons from the different regions. So according to the constitution of the APA, we have elections for office bearers every 3 years. However, we may need to change that to come in line with the laws of Guyana, which says that we should do it every year. However, we can understand that it's very expensive to bring our members to Georgetown or to another community where we have our General Assembly. It costs quite a lot of money, so we'll have to find a way in terms of how we work with that. But as it is, we have representation in all of the regions that we work at. So the office of the APA is in the capital city of Georgetown. So where do we work? We work primarily in all the regions where Indigenous peoples are in a higher density of populations. For example, we have regions 1, regions 2, regions 7, 8, and 9. These are the regions where we do most of our work. And as specifically for the Amazon 2.0 project, we have been working in region 8, which is the purple region highlighted here, and you can see a bigger photo on the right. We have been working in region 8 for the purpose of the Amazon 2.0 project. But now, with other types of projects that we're doing, we have actually started working in regions 4 and also region 6, which are on the top here. The reason for that is that we're working to do some land tenure work in terms of titling and demarcation of our titles and territories or communities. So in essence, APA works right across Guyana, which is one of the things that, well, the only organization that does that actually. I mentioned land tenure assessments. In terms of the monitoring work that we would have been doing over the years, we have some studies, and I'll share those studies as well with IUCN, that you can have access to these studies. We've had land tenure assessments done in regions 1 and 2, and these were like comprehensive studies done by local community members supported by technical staff from the APA and our partner organizations. So basically what it was, we did an assessment of the land tenure situation in many of our communities. I wouldn't say all of them, because some communities which did not grant us permission to participate, we couldn't do it because as an organization, we work with the permission from communities as well. So we have completed tenure assessments for regions 1 and 2, region 7, and region 8. And currently we are working in region 9. We're in the process of putting together the final report of the studies that we would have conducted in region 9. But basically the information we collected, it helps us to form our policy decisions, but not just that. We're hoping that those results from those findings can actually help shape government's policy in terms of dealing with indigenous peoples across our country. And a lot of information is contained in those documents, including maps, including information on certain threats for each of the communities that we would have worked on. So there is quite a lot of information there that would have been, well, critical in terms of how governments can address the issues. So only 2 days ago, the APA met with the new Minister of Amerindian Affairs to talk about some of the work that we have been doing and how we can collaborate with the government in terms of ensuring that we continue this type of work and ensuring that the rights of indigenous peoples are continue to be protected and respected. And in that regard, what we would have done is that we would have presented her with our most recent LTA report, the report of Region 7. So this can help her as well in terms of seeing what are the existing problems out there in communities, and hopefully it can help to shape how the government responds to those things. So ultimately, it's the governments who will have to make certain decisions, but we can help influence that by collecting data. So in all the work that we do, the ultimate goal is to ensure that our rights as indigenous peoples are protected and respected. So what exactly do we monitor? Primarily, we monitor for environmental degradation. And this has to do with mining, logging, and other extractive industries. So for example, like, they have sand mining, they have other things that happen in our communities or within the lands and territories of our people. And secondly, we work to look at water pollution. We test the turbidity and acidity and other things of water, because this water pollution usually is as a direct result of mining activities happening within our communities or even outside of our communities, but at the source of the rivers that we use. And many of our communities, we still use our rivers to drink, to cook, to wash, to bathe. So any activity happening upstream, for example, in terms of mining activity, can have negative impacts on our communities, because we know that even though there is a ban on mercury, that mercury is still one of the things used in mining in the gold industry. So it's the cheapest way to amalgamate gold, so everybody uses it. So we know that any mining happening will be using mercury. And one of the other things that we try to monitor as well is the socioeconomic impacts of these extractive industries around our communities, because they all create threats and different types of threats to our various communities. And we have seen how our young people are drawn into the mining industry. We have seen the young men drawn for the gold, but we would have also seen some of our young women also being drawn into prostitution and other activities as a result of the minings and even the forestry operations happening. So these are some of the things that we look for. One of the things that we would have done as an organization is to look at how communities can play an important role in terms of monitoring activities. And when Guyana would have started to negotiate with the European Union on the FLECT VPA, we had pushed for Indigenous peoples' participation in the negotiations, because at the time, Indigenous peoples were basically excluded from the discussions. And through the European Union, the Amerindian Peoples Association, we were able to receive funding from the EU to have sessions with communities to ensure that they are participating in these negotiations. Because we realized that as civil society organizations, we need to partner as well with communities, because there are some benefits and there are some advantages for both groups. So for example, for civil society organizations, you know, our work usually are evidence-based and investigatory, since, you know, we use case studies, we use mission reports. So we have more of a structure compared to communities, which are independent. You know, they're free to publish reports at their own risk. So communities have a little bit more liberty in terms of publishing what they can. And the civil society, now we have to do a little bit more research, because of course, people look to us as well. So in the civil society organizations, for example, you have better access to high-level policy makers. And this is one of the things I believe that civil society has a role to play in ensuring that communities are connected. Because yes, we have an office here in Georgetown as APA, we have access to the ministers, we have access to the heads of state agencies. However, a community which is remote do not have that access. And we have a responsibility as a civil society organization to ensure that, you know, we can bridge that gap for the communities as well. Additionally, the civil society, we have stronger political protection from being established and well-known. So, you know, because people know us, it means they will not just come and target us just like that. I mean, of course, yes, governments will try to do things, but we are better protected. We have more protection because of we are well established. We're networked. We're connected with IUCN. We're connected with the Rainforest Foundation. We're connected with the Forest Peoples Program. You know, we have all these connections. So it's easy. It's not as easy for governments, example, to pressure us too hard. And the problem, however, is that there are few of them covering a large area. So APA, for example, like I said, we work across many regions. And because of that, we are stretched thin. You know, we don't have sometimes adequate human resources to ensure that we get enough done. And it can become a challenge sometimes, because I have to try to do so many things, just me, because of course we need to get it done. And you know, it's very tough. And another bad thing about CSOs is that, you know, we are very dependent on donor funds. So if we don't get funding for a project, then it means that, you know, it can hamper how much we can do. All right. In the communities, for example, they have better knowledge of the local forest. it's important for us to recognize this, and it's important, and this is one of the primary reasons why we need to get communities more involved in actually monitoring their forest, because they know their forest. I mean, I grew up in a village in Region 8, and I know the surrounding areas. You know, I know it because I would have gone hunting in those areas. You know, we have farms in certain areas. You know, we have this knowledge that can really help in terms of how we monitor and how we respond to threats. We are the ones on the ground, so we will see and we will hear when something is happening. And because of this, it's critical that we involve communities. The other thing is that communities have a greater legitimacy, which is derived from being directly affected by forest operations. What this means is that because we are affected directly, you know, in our community, something happens to the forest, something is happening, it affects me directly because I live there, it's my home. And, you know, you're doing something to my home, which, you know, will have negative impacts on me, all right? So it's important for us to recognize that. And I think one of the other things with communities is that they're right there in the forest. And many of our communities are in the forest. Yes, of course, we have some communities in savanna lands, but many of our communities are right next to the forest. They are in the forest, and we need to clear them. And last but not least, one of the disadvantages of it, though, however, is that they're very, very vulnerable to exploitation. And we have seen this many times happening in our country, right here in Guyana, and I'm sure it happens in other countries as well, is that many times large corporations would take advantage of small communities. You know, they would bribe leaders, they would write contracts, which, you know, really is not supports what the village wants, because many times our communities, you know, they may not have someone who understands the law, like, you know, the companies will have lawyers and other people, and, you know, they basically bully their way in and take advantage of communities. And that's one of the challenges, because the communities are so vulnerable. So what have we done? I talked a bit about our actively participated in the development of the FLECT VPA. So the voluntary partnership agreement that Guyana is getting into, for example, is one which seeks to reduce illegal harvesting of timber. Over the years, the APA has participated in discussions in terms of developing the legal frameworks by which this will happen. And we have done that with ensuring that there was effective community participation. So what the APA would have done is that we would have gone to communities, held workshops for several days, explaining to them the entire FLECT VPA, what it means, and also how they can be a part of it and what they can suggest. So there was a lot of back and forth with the Forestry Commission in terms of what it is that we wanted. In the end, we did get some of what we wanted. However, we did not get everything. And coming out of that, we would have worked with a pilot community, developing a community monitoring framework. So we identified a community which was heavily involved in logging and forestry operations. And we worked with them in developing a monitoring framework in terms of what it is they can monitor, how they can go about monitoring it. And beyond that, we even developed what we call a FPIC protocol, and a protocol in terms of how communities can deal with outsiders, how communities can deal with third parties in terms of making agreements, in terms of any projects that, you know, wanted to come into the community, how they can deal with that. So we would have worked with that community to develop these things. And currently what we are doing is actually testing the framework, but also trying to improve it so that they can be like one of the guides in terms of moving forward. How do we monitor our forest operations? How do we monitor activities which are happening in our lands and our surrounding areas? They have been working on that. And we're hoping that in the end, ultimately, you know, the lessons that we learn from that community can be transferred to other communities as well, because it is critical, it is important that we have this connection in terms of, okay, it worked here, let's try it over there. Because one of the things, and I think what I liked about the whole these learning exchanges is that I have learned quite a lot from many of your countries as well in terms of what were the lessons learned and how we can improve things. And I believe that is important. So we're hoping that coming out of this, we can have more knowledge that can be shared among other communities. Gold mining is one of the biggest challenges in Guyana here, and it's one of the things that we have been monitoring as APA. We have both land mining and we also have water mining. In the land mining, water is used to wash away the gravel and sucked up into another pump and pass through a system. I'm not going to go into the details of what that system is. And similarly, in the water mining, pumps are used as well to suck up the gravel off the riverbed and pass it through a sluice. So where do we monitor? The APA has been focusing on three critical areas, and the two primary ones, Region 7, which is up here, and Region 8 here, and then Region 9, which is the South Rupununi. This has been one of our partners focuses a lot more there, but all of the data generated is shared with us as well as APA, and ultimately we will have a bigger picture of what is happening. And the reason why these three areas is that these are the three areas where most of our indigenous people live. And this is also the areas where you have a lot of the mining activities happening. It's the gold-bearing regions of Guyana, if you want to put it that way. So we focus our work in those three areas primarily in terms of the monitoring aspects. So how does it work? So communities identify potential monitors, and I'm telling you here now a little bit about how our process works. So the communities would identify potential monitors, they determine who will be the monitors, who will be trained, and we do the training from APA. Our technical staff would do that. We have a GIS unit, we have a mapping unit, and we would provide training for the potential monitors which were identified by the communities. And one of the things that we do is that we try to ensure that it's gender balanced. However, remember, ultimately it's the community who will decide who can be participating. So once those persons would have been identified, we do the training for the monitors. Once they would have been trained, then they go out and they collect data. So they collect different types of data. So for example, if we are monitoring a mining site, we will want to know who's the owner of the dredge, what is the number, the registration number of the dredge. We would want to know if they use mercury and so many other things. We have a complete form, a survey form that we use to capture information, generate information from them. But it's not just about that. We also would have observations being done in terms of how they are mining, and these are things that we do. So once that data is collected, we then have it processed. So a data technician will collect the data, clean it, process it, analyze it, and also store it, but also prepare reports for the village leaders, because many times we want information in real time. If there is a threat that is happening on community lands, then the village council should know almost immediately that this is happening. So it's one of the good things for us in that our monitors can go back to the village leadership and say, look, this is happening here. They can show them on their phones, because we use smartphones with a mapping application. So they can show them the exact place, and they can show them photos or videos which are geotagged, where the activity is happening, where the threat is happening. And so there is that, immediate thing almost. But the reports also go to the district council, as well as to APA. So the district councils are groups of communities which are in like a geographic area. They meet and they discuss what is happening in their area. So reports will go to them as well. So it's a system which ensures that everyone is involved. And some of the equipment that we use are the Armor 2 smartphones. So here you see the smartphones. And one of the reasons why we use that smartphone is that because it's rugged, but it also has a good quality imagery in terms of photos, in terms of videos. And it also has a built-in GPS that works pretty good. So we would install our software to this phone, and the monitors will use that in the field. We also use drone technology to take photos and videos from overhead, as many times you will not appreciate the extent of degradation done from just by standing, in the place. So sometimes an aerial photo will help you to see how much damage would have been done. So we use drones as well in our work. Additionally, we use, of course, computers to with the QGIS, and QGIS is a free open source mapping software, which is pretty good. We use that. We use that to analyze and process the data that we have collected from the monitors, and then it is then processed and stored in a different place. So these are the main basic equipment that we use in our field work. So how does it work? So we have the monitor who is trained, he collects the data, he hands it over to the data technician. Hands it over to the data technician. The data technician then process, clean, analyze, generate, and then he will send it to the regional coordinator. So what we have is a regional coordinator in each region who is in direct contact with the district councils. All right, so he would make the reports and ensure that the district councils get those reports. But the technician also sends the information to the APA GIS department. So we store it, we analyze as well, further analyze, and we generate maps, we do water reports, and we also get those back to the village councils as well as to the district council. So it's like I said earlier, it's one which ensures that everyone is involved, because any decision that is made should be a decision made which is informed and you have adequate information to make your decision. We have in Guyana a lot of open pit mines, and we have seen a lot of destruction as a result of this. And more so, we have seen sometimes multiple land dredges in one pit, and you may have excavators. And as a result of the excavators, you have a lot of forest degradation, because the excavators are able to clear the forests away. They're able to take off the topsoil. So you find more open pits and more larger extent of open pit mining happening in our communities. And here you would see a drone shot of an open pit as well happening. So they're mining for gold. And these are the things that helps us to understand and appreciate where it is happening. Eventually, what we plan on doing is to actually use satellite imagery as well. So when we would have recognized the extent of degradation happening in a particular area, we can measure that over time using satellite imagery, using applications such as Google Earth, which is also free, but it also provides some really interesting tools that can be used to actually measure the rate of degradation over any period. So this is one of the things that we will do eventually in terms of using that to see what would have been happening over the years. But for now, we're just using our monitors to go on the ground to actually see it. But then, of course, the monitors will actually collect data like the geographic positions of those places, and that information we will use even at a later date to ensure that we can measure and see what is happening and how fast it would have happened. We have a lot of river mining still happening in Guyana. And this here is a drone shot as well of a dragger. They have different names for this type of dredge. They call it a dragger, they call it a missile. And the thing is, it's really a hydraulic operated suction device that really tears up the riverbed. It also is able to change the course of rivers. And we have seen many times around Guyana where these dredges have really done significant damage to our river systems, even though it is illegal for dredges to mine the banks of the rivers. We have seen it continue to happen right across Guyana where these dredges actually change the courses of rivers and things like that. So there is need for more on the ground monitoring of these dredges in our rivers. And I think it's one of the things that our communities have recognized. And that is the reason why, you know, they want to be involved more in the whole monitoring process. It has been a challenge, but I think over the years, we have been making some inroads in terms of being recognized as community monitors, that, you know, that their work, the data that they collect can be used as evidence against illegal miners, against miners who are breaking the law. But not just that, that their reports can generate some sort of response from the authorities who have the law in their hands to enforce penalties against these persons. So I believe that in time we will get there, but it's just taking some time for this moment. So like I said, the monitor, for example, when we go to mining camps, they take a GPS points of each mining camp. They take a GPS position of the pits, and we do this with an application called Locus Map. We find that Locus Map is one of the applications which is very useful for us in that, you know, we can take different types of data using the map. And one of the good things is that you can actually have that photo, that video, that voice note geo-reference. So it's pretty sure that you were there. You know, it takes the exact position you were when you took that photo or when you did that video. So it's very important for us, because one of the things is that we want to show the authorities that, you know what, we have been there, we were there. You know, we are not just telling you something that we did not see. Look, we have the evidence here. So we're trying to work towards a more evidence-based system, because we believe that this is the way that authorities can become more able to understand what's happening and take actions, right? So we take pictures of mining camp with, you know, geotag, but we also complete a survey form. And this is very important for the work that we do, because we need to ask questions, because sometimes just observing, we may, you know, misrepresent what is happening. So for us, it's important that we complete a survey form. So ask the miners basic questions in terms of their operations. One, to see if they're legitimate. Two, to see if they're operating within the guidelines as prescribed by the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. Because in our training, one of the things that we do is that we ensure that our monitors are familiar with the regulations of the Mining Commission. This is necessary because if we're going to go out there into mining areas to observe what is happening, then we should at least understand what the mining practices should be, okay? The other thing that we do is that it's beyond mining, it's beyond logging, but it's about understanding our territory and what happens in our territory, because many times we have vast territories, vast areas, which are many times not touched. And, you know, people don't really go in those parts. But some of those sites are important for us. You know, they're critical hunting grounds sometimes, and farming grounds for others, but also gathering grounds. And we have been able to collect quite a lot of data, and it will be published soon. And once it goes public, then we can share with this particular project. But we have collected quite a lot of data around various regions in our territories. And like I said, we use local persons from the community, with our support, of course, to get this done. Because right across Guyana, in our lands and out of our lands, activities continue to happen. And we find that as roads and other infrastructure go further into the interior, into the remote locations, you find more activities coming, more extractive activities. You have miners coming, but you also have loggers coming. And these are the two main extractive industries that happen, that come as well, road development, infrastructure development happens. So we want to ensure that we capture all of this. The reason for this is that many times our maps, which are government maps, do not really show the extent of our use areas. And this has resulted many times in state agencies like the Geology and Mines Commission granting mining concessions to persons in areas because it looks empty, it looks free, it looks like nothing is happening there. However, these are lands that we use. You know, these are lands where we hunt, these are lands where we fish, these are lands where we gather, these are lands where we have our sacred sites. And for us, it is important and it's critical that if we're going to manage our territory in a better way, then we need to start monitoring that territory. It means that we have to go out there and ensure that we capture these and put it on a map so that we can share these maps with the government and other agencies who are responsible for making decisions on our lands and say, hey, look, this is where we use this, what we use it for. So we are out there doing that. Sometimes it requires us, you know, walking for days or going many hours on a motorcycle or something, but it's critical that we go out there to do this. We have the data manager. So once the monitor would have collected the data, what happens with that data? Okay, so we have the data manager or a data technician. They would collect the smartphones from the monitors and take the data off and put it onto a laptop, all right? And we also have backup, of course. We need to ensure we have our backups. But we do this so that now we can process the data that was collected. So of course, we would have had the survey forms, we would put it on an Excel spreadsheet for better analyzing. We take the GPS data of the smartphones and put it into QGIS. And of course, I said QGIS is, you know, it's open source and it's free, and it's something that it really works well. We believe for what it is that we're trying to do at the moment. And it's something that, you know, local community members can also learn to use. And it's critical that they understand as well how to use this because they're the ones we expect to be monitoring and following and providing reports. And the data manager also organizes like all the raw data into folders and save it for us. A lot of our work has been around. A lot of our work has been around mining. And for example, here we have the community of Arrow. And we can see on the right, the photo, well, on my right, a photo of a lot of the mining which has happened. On the left, it's the community. This community, for example, has been affected by mining because the mining is actually happening on the titled land of the community by outsiders. And this has resulted in a lot of conflicts. The conflict is because the village, which is on the left, is out of the title land. And this is as a result of a titling and demarcation error by the government in that they excluded the village itself from its title. The village land would have included this area, which is mined as well. And this is where the title is currently. And it is causing a lot of problems. And these are things that we help to identify and to point out. So we want to show the evidence to the government, say, look, this is what is happening. This is where it is happening. I remembered when I took this shot of this mining area, I was at the home of two elderly persons. You know, they lived there and they were basically surrounded by mining. And the miners had wanted them to move because the gold was going into that direction. And they're like, you know, this is our home. We can't move from here. We would not move. You know, the miners offered them like 10 million Guyana dollars to move. They said, no, we're not moving because this is our home. And these are things that we need to highlight, and these are the threats that our people face, you know, where we are many times by outsiders who have a lot of influence, who have a lot of monies, who have a lot of connections, you know, many times take advantage of our people. So these are the things that we capture and we bring to the attention of the necessary state agencies and governments who can make a decision on it. A few weeks ago, we talked about our monitoring program, and Paulina Baca, a consultant, was able to put together what, you know, the flow chart looks like in terms of our monitoring program. I'll not go through it in detail, but I'll just speak to the different levels. So we have the levels of the community, the monitors, you know, they collect the data, and we went through that process just on how it happened. But then there is also the APA. And like I said, as civil society organization, we have a responsibility to be the bridge, to be the gap between our communities and, you know, the policymakers. Next, we have the regional and national state agencies. You know, they have a responsibility as well in terms of us providing data to them. They have the responsibility to respond to the actions. And of course, we have the bigger picture in terms of the international, like IUCN and others who can, you know, create and help us in terms of the advocacy work that we are doing. Looking forward, for us, there's a lot. We see a bright future in that we believe that the policymakers now are becoming more aware that we are collecting evidence which can help shape their decisions. I think previously it was difficult in that we only spoke in abstract and never really had the evidence to back up or to support what we're saying. And as a result of that, many decisions were made without really being informed. However, now with more communities becoming involved and with more community members becoming involved in the actual monitoring process in terms of collecting data and different types of data, it is becoming more evident to our policymakers that we mean business and that we are not going to just take their decision just like that without, you know, having them review our information that we're collecting. But we will try to influence them by ensuring that we collect all the necessary information that we can, because in the end, we are the ones who are being affected. We are the ones who are being impacted, and many times in a negative way. For us, our program, we only see it expanding, and because we have been working more closely with the district councils, and, you know, the district councils have a bigger vision of, you know, territorial management. They see the necessity to work together as communities. They see the necessity to ensure that our lands are titled and secured, and that we have the right to manage and control our own lands as Indigenous peoples. One of the things in Region 8, for example, where we live, where the project is working, is that we have some common shared use areas that are used by many of our communities. However, these shared use areas are many times outside of community titles, which in itself is a problem, because now we have third parties, we have mining concessions, we have logging concessions in those areas. And it has resulted many times in conflicts between our people and those concessionaires, because the concessionaires do not want us to work on their lands, or do not want us to have access to lands to take, you know, to gather, to hunt, to fish, because, oh, they have a legal title to it. And these are conflicts that will continue to exist. And it's one of the reasons why we will continue to collect data. We will continue to map those areas, because for us, it is important, not just for us today, but we are looking towards our future, the future generations which come after our children and their children, and what they can do, what they will have access to once we would have moved on. So that's what we're going. So my life sometimes, and I really miss this for the last few months, I have been in office and sometimes at home, but I really miss being in the outdoors, you know, walking for days sometimes. You know, you're fetching everything that you have, you hunt, you know, get a bird or something for dinner. But it is what I do, it is what I want to do, and it's my life. And I believe that my role and responsibility is for my people. And in whatever way I can, I will ensure that I do.
Michael? I think we lost Michael. Let me see. Yeah, I think something happened with Michael's connection, but he was just finishing. Let's hold on just for a minute until he's able to reconnect. Michael, we lost you for a few seconds.
Yeah, sorry about that. My computer died on me. I didn't plug it in. I'm so sorry about that. So I'm on my phone. But what I was saying, I was just wrapping up. You know, thank you for giving me the space to share. And if there are any questions, then we can entertain those now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Michael, and to all the APA team. That was very interesting to hear the experiences, well, a little bit of the context, what the association does in Guyana, and a bit of the work of monitoring, and I think that is very interesting. So now we're going to open, and just the last thing, that last slide you showed, I think a lot of us, or maybe all of us, miss a lot of being able to actually be, you know, in the field, and I think that is the inspiration to a lot of our work. So I think, yeah, I think hopefully next year will be better, and we will be able to actually do the activities in the field again. So thank you very much, Michael. So now we're going to open the floor for questions. Please let me know through the chat whether you have a question. For instance, right now, Alejandra has one. And then if you have any others, please let me know, so then I can announce who's next. So Alejandra, go ahead. And then after Alejandra, Max also has his hand raised. So Alejandra and then Max, go ahead.
Hola. Michael, thanks for a wonderful presentation. I'm very happy to hear you. I'm going to ask in Spanish. I think that the translator can be more clear than my English. It's okay, Michael?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. Michael, en Surinam tenemos dos retos muy grandes y quiero preguntarte cómo los manejan ustedes en Guyana. Uno de ellos es que las actividades ilegales como la minería principalmente o la tala ilegal de madera son actividades donde muchas veces está implicada gente armada. Entonces, para nuestros monitores y para los monitores en general en Surinam, para las comunidades, ellos se sienten en riesgo haciendo monitoreo de estas actividades. No saben cómo proteger su seguridad y muchas veces los han sacado del bosque con armas y ahí tenemos un reto muy grande que no entendemos muy bien cómo manejar. Y el segundo reto es que muchas veces los monitores se sienten desincentivados porque la información que recogen, haciendo un esfuerzo grande y poniendo en riesgo muchas veces su integridad física, ni el gobierno y muchas veces las autoridades tradicionales no toman esa información para tomar decisiones En el caso de las autoridades, porque muchas veces hay problemas de corrupción, ellos también están, digamos, en el negocio o de la madera o de la minería. Y en el caso del gobierno, bueno, por varias razones, pero ustedes tienen situaciones similares y cómo han hecho para enfrentarlas.
Thank you, Alejandra. Interesting question indeed. And I know in the past we would have had similar situations where persons were being driven off, their lands concessions by concessionaires sometimes with guns. But I think what has happened, I believe that in Guyana here,